Massachusetts, Mr. Capiano, 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, pretty much everything has been said to many extents, except I think, obviously, the leadership is still not hearing us. And it's not just us who are saying this. The American people are saying this. Everyone has seen the polls. Everyone knows the reality that in the last couple of weeks, 90% of the American people want us to do very simple things. No fly, no buy, and closing gaping, not small, but gaping loopholes in the background check. Now, I, like some of my colleagues, I personally would go further. My constituents would support that. There are many things we could be doing, but we're not asking for those things because we know that's a difficult lift in the House of Representatives. But I represent the same number of people as every other member here, about 750,000 people. And when 90% of those constituents in every district wants us to take simple, direct action, I think it's a dereliction of duty and responsibility and our oath to ignore that, unless there is some moral reason for us to disagree with our constituents. And on this issue, I can't believe anyone has a moral disagreement with this. Everyone's talking about Orlando, and that's obviously the most important, most compelling one. But since the Orlando shooting, in the last 10 days, in America, there have been 77 people, at least, killed with guns. At least. And I say that because many of these things get minimal reporting. Why? Because all of us are used to turning on the local news in every corner of this country every single night and seeing another act of violence, almost always committed with a gun, across America. It's not an urban problem or a rural problem. It's across the country. And we've become a little desensitized to it because it happens all the time. Once in a while, we'll get an Orlando tragedy or a Sandy Hook tragedy, and we'll all jump up and down and say how upset we are. But it's been pointed out many times, we don't seem to get all that upset when 2 or 3 people get shot in the middle of some other place. Sometimes we think, well, it's probably just gang violence. It's just one gang member shooting another gang member. Maybe they deserve it. America's better off. How do you say that when there's a 3-year-old who gets shot? Or a 7-year-old? How dare you say that? Or a woman walking down the street, or people literally just sitting in their homes innocently. And people say that some of the proposals that have been made wouldn't have stopped Orlando, or wouldn't have stopped Sandy Hook, or wouldn't have stopped something else. And you know what? Maybe they're right. I don't know. But I've never in my life, either politically or personally, used the excuse that because I can't do everything, that therefore I should do nothing. That is nothing more than a lame excuse. If we can save the life of one person by taking simple actions that everybody seems to agree with. If you can't fly, you can't buy a gun. Close the loopholes in background checks. No one has a problem with background checks. Most Americans don't know there are loopholes. And I don't mean little ones. I mean gaping ones. As you heard earlier, about 40% of the guns sold in this country are not subject to background checks. That's not a loophole, that's a gaping loophole. In the last 10 days, 239 Americans have been injured with guns. Now some say, well, it's in home defense, it's accidental shootings, and that's true, some of them are. All this stuff is available to anybody who wants to take 5 minutes and do a simple internet search like I did. There are dozens of reputable websites that have this information. One of them, the Gun Violence Archive. Simple statistics, not advocating, statistics. In 2015, the last calendar year, they list 13,433 deaths by gun. That's 36.8 per day. And this year, we're on pace to exceed that. Of that, 2 children under the age of 11 per day were shot. 2 per day. Yes, about 10% of the incidents were home invasions, defensive use, and accidental shooting, which is why none of us are trying to impede law-abiding American citizens from owning a gun. But that leaves 90% of the gun activity outside that. For us to not take action, in my opinion, is indefensible. In 18 years, I have never participated in this morning hour discussion. I haven't done it because I find most of this, more often than not, somebody's reason to make a political statement. And I guess on some levels, that's what I'm doing right now. But on occasion, things get to the point where we as a group have to stand up. That we individually have to stand up and demand what is the simplest action imaginable. If you're too dangerous to fly, you're too dangerous to buy. The simplest action, put it on the floor. I would respect someone for coming up and voting no. I would disagree, but at least they wouldn't be able to hide behind their own political rhetoric that somehow people like me are trying to pull guns away from them. The truth is, it's a simple action. And I will tell you, as a House member, I'm a bit embarrassed that the Senate was at least able to put it on the floor. At least they will have to answer to their constituents.
Gentleman's time's expired.
I understand that, Mr. Speaker. This issue has not expired,
Chair
and
recognizes
this
the
issue
gentlelady
will
from
not go
Illinois,
away,
Ms.
and this
Schakowsky,
issue
for
will
5
not be
minutes.
the end of this debate today or tomorrow until we get a vote on these simple issues and do something to protect the children of America. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.